Hello everybody, we're starting a new Sikha today. With the help of God, we should even get further and closer to find the Gula. It's from, we're using the English translation. It's when the Rebbe spoke on 5752, the 11th of Adar, PARSHAS TETZAVEH. It's the second Sikha, and it's in the book called The Royal Words. Translated, it's a translation, word for word, of the Rebbe Sikhos, the last year the Rebbe spoke. We're starting on page 111, which is, before we start, why don't we sing a niggin? Well, maybe we'll start with a quick niggin to give us, because we're talking about such wonderful and joyous things. We're in the month of Adar. Let's sing a niggin. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh Achashverosh. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh Achashverosh HaMolech Meidu Bi'ad Kush HaMolech Meidu Bi'ad Kush Sheba B'Yesri Mumeya Medina Sheba B'Yesri Mumeya Medina V'hi b'mei Achashverosh Achashverosh V'hi b'mei Achashverosh Achashverosh HaMolech Meidu Bi'ad Kush HaMolech Meidu Bi'ad Kush Sheva B'Yesri Mumeya Medina. So this niggin is talking about Achashverosh ruled the whole world, and for us it's talking about the Inyan from Purim. The Inyan from Purim is to bring godliness in the whole world. So at the beginning and the conclusion of the Torah portion of TETZAVEH, the Torah speaks about the kindling of the lamps of the menorah. Now the menorah in the holy temple, and also the tabernacle was made in the desert. There was called the holies, and inside this part was not the inner chamber, but an inner chamber, and in that you had the menorah, which was that it would light the menorah, and you also had you had an altar on the inside called the golden altar, which they would bring incense on, and also you had where they would offer the bread offering. But these were like all on the inside. There was an outer, not quite as level of holiness, is where the altar that was made from copper was made, where we brought the sacrifices. So let's start. So here, so this week's Parsha is talking about the lighting of the candles. At the beginning of the Parsha, it says, "And they shall take pure olive oil for you to light an eternal lamp in the oil ma'ed in the sanctuary of the tabernacle, and Aaron and his children shall set it up from night until morning." And similarly, at the conclusion of the Torah portion, after many things, talking many other issues, it says every morning upon arranging the lamps and upon lighting the lamps in the afternoon by Aaron. So we see in the beginning and is talking about the lighting of the menorah. And the main innovation added in the conclusion, the new thing in the conclusion of the Torah portion, is that it says that the lighting of the lamps is in connection with the burning of the ketoras, the incense. This is what we're going to be talking about, that the incense is the essence, the revelation of the unity, the true bond between us and Hashem. And it says, "And you shall make an altar for the burning of the ketoras," that's the incense, "and Aaron shall burn the ketoras," the incense, a burnt offering, of fragrant spices, every morning. Upon arranging the lamps he should burn it, and when Aaron lights the lamps in the afternoon, it should be burnt. Meaning that the burning of the ketoras, the incense, is at the time of the arranging and the lighting of the lamps. At the time of the arranging and the lighting of lamps, the ketoras shall be burnt. This is a quoting of a pasuk. And at the time of the lighting of the lamps, the ketoras shall be burnt. So in other words, the Rebbe is pointing out that there's a special thing to do with the lighting of the menorah that was in the holy temple, and also the offering of the incense. Furthermore, that the incense, the ketoras, is offered in the middle of the range of the lamps. So the Rebbe will go on to explain there's different opinions, but we hold like the opinion that they would first prepare five of the candle, the menorah, in the base of Mikdash, in the holy temple, and also in the tabernacle, it had seven candles. So they would light prepare and light five, then they would bring the ketoras, then they would offer the incense, and then after that they would finish lighting the final two. So this was done, the ketoras was done in the middle of the lighting. So according to the opinion of the sages, the order is not that he arranges the lamps all seven. This is somebody else. This is not the order. And afterwards burns the ketoras. Rather, he should arrange only five, burn the ketoras, the incense in the middle, and then arrange them and complete the arranging of the last two. Namely, that he divides the arranging of the 5 lamps and the arranging of the 2 lamps with the burning of Katoris. Not like the opinion of Abba Shaul. Now, this Abba Shaul is like we read this every morning. It's another opinion of the order, how all the different services was. It's this, the rabbis don't, the sages don't hold like this, that he should arrange all of them, and that he should light them all, and then he should burn the Katoris, then he should burn the incense, for it's written every morning upon arranging the lamps, and then he should burn the Katoris. And he divides the arranging of the 5 lamps and the arranging of the 2 lamps with the sprinkling blood of the Talmud sacrifice. In other words, everybody agrees that you have to prepare 5 lamps, and then you have to prepare the 2 lamps, and there's something happening in between. The difference is the sages say what's happening between the 5 and the final 2 lighting is the bringing of the incense. And Rabbi Shaul says, Rabbi Abba Shaul says that what's in between the 2 is the sprinkling of the blood from the daily sacrifice. And the law, now let's go further. And the law is in accordance with the opinion of the sages, as the ruling of the Rambam. It says in the Rambam, after one sprinkles the blood of the Talmud sacrifice, the person in the Heikel arranges the 5 lamps. So here we sprinkle the sacrifice. Then a person goes into the Heikel and makes the 5 lamps. Then they both go out of the Heikel. And after Heikel is the holy one. And afterwards they draw lots. And one who merits to offer the Katoris enters and burns the Katoris. And afterwards, the one who merited to arrange the menorah goes in and arranges the final 2 lamps. So it says here there seems to be something very special about the lighting of the offering of the incense and the lighting of the final 2 candles. Now, it is appropriate to explain the concept of the Katoris and the lighting of the lamps and the relationship to one another in the service of man. It is known that all aspects of the tabernacle, the base of Mikdash and the base of Mikdash, are found in the service of man every day in the tabernacle sanctuary within him. As it is written, and they shall make for me a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among you. In other words, in Torah, and they explain, it doesn't say in Hebrew, it comes out very clear. It says that you should make for a sanctuary, and I will dwell among you. It doesn't say I will dwell in it. Because it means that Hashem, it doesn't say that I will dwell in it, rather in you. That with each and every Jew and Jewess. So Hashem will dwell in us. So, the main thing is we should realize that when you talk about the Holy Temple, you see pictures, you look at books, how special it was. And Hashem revealed himself there. Each and every one of us is a holy temple. We have to make ourselves, we have everything to make a holy temple. We're a special holy temple. It's a very a wonderful thought to think about how each and every one of us is a special holy temple for Hashem. As emphasized in recitation, our lips will compensate for the ox sacrifice. In other words, we say, since the destruction of the temple, by talking about it and bringing in our prayers, it's as though we're bringing the sacrifices and do the Avodah. So it says, so we're saying that we're talking about here that everything has a certain service, and we talk about that in our daily prayers, in the morning prayers, before when we're talking about the Kabbanas. It says, in the beginning of the daily morning prayers, we talk about the passage of the Ashes service, the passage of the Talmud sacrifice, and the passage of the Katoris, including Baya would list the order of sacrifice of services. So basis of what's it mean? It means that there are different services in the one was talking about how you have to keep the fire, the ashes service, keep the fire continually on the altar, the outside altar, and it's talking about where to put the ashes. And then the second one's talking about that we would bring a daily, twice a day, a sacrifice called the daily sacrifice, the atomic sacrifice. And then it's in the Torah, it's talking, it brings the passages from the Torah, from the written Torah about this. And then we talk about the Katoris, how they make it when they would offer it. And then finally at the end, we list in our morning thing, we list and talk about all the different services. So this is what it means. So by us talking about this, we are making a sanctuary for Hashem and ourselves. These are different levels that we're doing and making a sanctuary in our body for Hashem, and there are different levels in service of Hashem. Let's see what the Rebbe says further. And the passage of the Katoris has additional emphasis. Since besides the recitation, the passage from the written Torah, like the passages of the ashes services and the Talmud sacrifice from the portion Torah of Sisa, so the Rebbe says, and it says, take for yourself incense, he's quoting the book, and you should make it into Ketores, and you should place it, and you shall place from it, including the emphasis on its connections, the lightings, the lamps, as we continue, as the verse says, and Aaron should burn the Ketores on it, upon arranging the lamps, and when the Aaron lights the lamps. So in other words, the Rebbe is explaining that we read different parts in the portion of the written book, the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, not the oral Torah, and this is explained that we say this morning, and also in the morning when we talk about it, we bring the verses that talks about that the connection of the burning of the incense and the lighting of the nar. And so this is what we're doing every day. This is our voda. By talking about this, we are doing the voda. We're so special. In addition, we add and recite the long discussion of the details of the preparation, the Ketores, that is explained in the Brisa. The sages taught the order of the making Ketores as follows, that had 11 types of incense in it, and as we shall explain. You have to just look in the Siddur in the beginning before Hoda in the Siddur, and you can read that it talks about all of these different levels and different services of Hashem. So the thing Rebbe is pointing out here is all the other services that what to do with the ashes and the bringing the sacrifices. This is from the written Torah, but the only one that talks about in detail and explains it more from the oral Torah in much more detail is by the incense, the Ketores. And by the way of preference, a question, and by a preference, and by preference, a question regarding the passage of the lamps and the passage of the altar for the Ketores in the beginning and the conclusion of the Torah portion TETZAVEH. So we have to understand what's happening here. Why the Rebbe is going to explain here, ask the question that these shouldn't be here at first glance. They doesn't belong here. And after the Torah portion of Truma, in which the details of the structure of the tabernacle are explained, the Torah portion of TETZAVEH begins with the priestly of Aaron and his children, and you shall bring close to you. After you complete the structure of the tabernacle, Aaron and your brothers and his children should be coins for me. So he's saying the portion of it. So first we have in here PARSHAS Truma. It talks about how to have everything made. And then we talk about TETZAVEH, talks about what to do with the kohanim, the clothing and how to sanctify them. And through the making of the priestly garments, and you should make holy garments to sanctify him, to make him a coin for me. Then it's just Rebbe is bringing further that what it says in the PARSHAS TETZAVEH, and to bring him into priesthood through the garments, so he will be a coin for me. We're sanctifying him, as explained in detail in the continuation of the Torah portion until the 4th Aliyah, and including the inauguration of into the priesthood, when they were actually inaugurated and anointed. This is what you should do to sanctify them for me, to be a coin for me. And you should inaugurate Aaron and his children through the specific details of the 7th day of inauguration. That through this inauguration they will become consecrated for me for priesthood, which are explained in the continuation of the Torah portion from the 4th Aliyah until the 6th. So if you read in the Chumash and you go over this, you can read it in English. Reading the Chumash is talking about all the different parts of how to making the clothing, how to inaugurate, how to make the clothes anoint them, they should be holy. All different levels that have to do with Aaron and his children, of how they actually become priests and holy, the requirements. So therefore, and since almost the entire Torah portion discusses the priesthood of Aaron, you must understand what is the reason that it begins with the passage of the lamps and concludes with the passage of the altar for the Ketores. Why these are seem to be out of place. This is the Rebbe does a lot of time. He points out that things seem to be out of place, and since they're out of place, not really out of place, but they're put here to emphasize something important Hashem wants us in service of Hashem. Let's go further. And furthermore, these two passages, the passage of the lamps and the passage of the altar for the Ketores for the incense, were seemingly written out of order. The passage of the lamps, since it was not said here only in connection with the structure of the tabernacle, to explain the purpose of menorah. Seemingly, the place of this, in other words, talks about that you should light the menorah, about lighting the menorah. Really, we should have talked about that in the prior Torah portion, where it talked about the making of the menorah. That's where it should be talked about, not that you talk about when you make it and what to do with it. So that's what the Rebbe said. Seemingly, the place of this passage should have been in the order of the structure of the tabernacle, in the continuation of making the mortar, of the making of the making of the menorah in the Torah portion of Truma, and especially since it's the conclusion of the instructions for making menorah. It says, "And you shall light its lamp," and not in the beginning of the Torah portion TETZAVEH, which speaks about the priesthood to Aaron. So the Rebbe is explaining in detail that it makes no sense that they should be talking about the lighting menorah here. It should be talked about where it talks about how they have to make the menorah. And over there it says that also in the end, it says that you should light the lamp. So why is it talking here more details of how and when and everything? And the passage for the altar of the Ketoris, as the commentators have asked, that seemingly the place of this passage should have been in the Torah portion of Truma, together with all the vessels of the tabernacle, all the table of showbread, the menorah, and the outer altar, and not at the end of the portion of TETZAVEH, after all the specific details of the tabernacle, its vessels and the priestly garments and its inauguration. In other words, when they talked about all the vessels and making everything, the menorah, all the special things for the tabernacle, this is when they should talk about the incense. This is not the place. This is not the order. Should we talk about where they talk about making the gold altar, and that's what should be talked about. So the Rebbe says, we may say that the explanation for this now, we may say really it's a big kiddush. It means the Rebbe is telling us something that was never said before. He's telling us something brand new. It's the first time this has ever been revealed in the world, and especially revealing for us that we can serve Hashem better. And Hashem has allowed him to reveal new things that are we'll take a look. And it's very, very special. The fact that the passage of the altar for the Ketoris is written not in its seemingly correct place, together with all the vessels of the tabernacle in the portion Torah of Truma that we just said above, it's written not where it should be, rather after the tabernacle, after the vessels and the priestly garments and the inauguration, after everything is finished, is in order to emphasize the special virtue of the altar for the Ketoris. It's a special level. That since the main intention of the tabernacle is fulfilled, what's the main is when it says what is first in thought is last in action. So here we have what's first in thought was that we're going to explain that the Jews should be mamish revealed, that we're mamish one with Hashem, not separate and bound together with him, but we're mamish one with God. This is the first in thought that it should be revealed, and it's the last in action. That it's the last thing that you do when you're offering the incense, which represents this unity, as the Rebbe will go to explain. I stated in the Midrash that when the tabernacle and all its vessels were made, and they started the sacrifices, etc., the divine presence did not descend until they brought the Ketoris, until they brought the incense. That's the main thing. Among the explanations of this, and the service of man to his creator, our sages have said that there were two altars, one of gold, the inner altar, that corresponding to the soul of a person, and one of copper, the outer altar, corresponding to the body of the person. Jesus says the body eats likewise the sacrifices of the copper altar to the outside altar word for food. Jesus says the souls only have pleasure from fragrances. Therefore, the only thing that offered on the gold altar was Ketoris incense, things that produce fragrances. How are we doing in time? How much?
1.5 minutes.
Okay, so we're going to start in the middle over here. So then let's see what we get. I'll finish this. And in addition to this, they're interdependent. That through the sacrifices upon the copper altar, the phenomena of kiruv, bringing these things close to Hashem, carbon sacrifice is an idiom is for kiruv to come close, is accomplished. Whereas through the Ketoris, the phenomena is not only the bringing things closer, rather furthermore of the connecting and uniting with Hashem, and is accomplished through the Ketoris. The idea of being mamish one. Not connecting, not being tied together, but mamish one. Ketoris is an idiom for kishur, connection, to the extent they become one entity with Hashem. As the words of the Zohar says, I am tied with one knot, ketira with Hashem. Zai gesund, everybody.